Okay. First, welcome back to Abe. Rofei Cholam, you should feel good. And this Chabura tonight is sponsored Le'ilei Nishmas. You have it, Mark?
Here.
Thank you. It's sponsored by Sarah and Mark Merrill, who joined us for Shabbos. It's in memory of their grandfather, Binyamin and Tzvi Merrill, in honor of the work that the shul is doing, and Baruch Hashem, the incredible hasmada and cheshek to grow in Torah that the shul is all involved with. Yashikayach to them. So we were talking about a fundamental assumption that the whole sugya was assuming. Before you get to Palgin and Dibura, before you get to the mechanics of Palgin and Dibura, you have to establish that there's a problem with the Edus over here. That for me to say, Ploni Ravani, that for someone to have slept with me, at least consenting and willingly, that is someone who's actually Pasal Edus. So we spoke about last time, Tosfos raises the following Shaila. Is it so clear that if someone walks into Bezdin, or even someone testifies about me, that I was involved in Revia in relationships, that's going to invalidate me for Edus? So the answer is, we got a sneak peek last week. The answer is that the Gemara seems to, quote, present a machloikes Abaye and Rava about this, a fundamental machloikes. A person violates a lo saseh. A person violates something that's usr, and he gets malchus for it. So Abaye says right off the bat, just because you violate a lo saseh and you get malchus, that's someone who's pasal edus. We happen to paskin like Abaye. So therefore in Shulchan Aruch it says, any person who transgresses in aveira sheyesh bo malchus is pasal edus. Rava, fascinatingly, one of the only areas in Shas that we paskin like Abaye over Rava, Rava holds that that's not the case. It's not enough just to violate a lo saseh, even if the lo saseh gets malchus. Says Rava, you need to violate it with a drive. You need to violate it with a desire. You need to violate it with a rasha dechamas. A rasha that had some evil inclination and a desire that's going to be incontrollable also in the realm of edus. And I'm going to be paid off, or I'm going to be bribed, and I'm going to convince to not get involved in true testimony or whatever else I would do. And abstain from testifying correctly. Okay? Or I'll testify falsely. So Tosfos is raised with a question. So Rasha Dechamas, I understand when it's involved in Dinei Mominus, when it's involved in areas where you're going to make money. But who says this Ploni Ravani Lertzoni is a Rasha Dechamas? Rava is the one speaking in our Gemara. Rava is admitting that this guy, his Edus is unacceptable because he's a apostle. Why are you a apostle? So this Tosfos is fascinating. Says Tosfos, must be, Alpagav the Rava by Rasha Dechamas Perak Zebor, second to last Tosfos on Testament Bees. It's quickly just chazer what we did last time. Hi, Kamo Rasha Dechamas. So Tosfos originally assumes, he says, it's not only people who give in to their desires of money, it's not only people who give in to bribes, but it's also people who will forget the will of God and forget halacha and what they have to do because they can't control their sexual desires, their desires in relationships. Hi, Kamo Rasha Dechamas who dumya da'oichol nevelos l'te'avon kevin sha'oivr lana also al das koinoi. Since when I have two things on the at the fork in the road, I have das kono, which HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and I have my own personal hana. So which side of the road do I go? It says Tosfos, I go with my own hana, and therefore you're a Rasha Dechamas. So you're puzzled even according to Rava. So too, we're concerned that if you're going to testify in this court case, you're going to go for your own hanas mamon, just like you went for your own hanas pleasure, instead of and ignoring what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants. And what we spoke about last week. But the Gemara on Daf Chav Vav and Beis seems to say, a person who's kosher al arayos is kosher le'edus. So Tosfos says that Gemara seems to contradict what I just presented. I presented to you that what? Even Rava, who's the Mekel, and holds that the only thing that invalidates you for edus is a rasha with a desire, a rasha with a yetzer hara, a rasha dechamas. So the Gemara says that if you're kosher al arayos, you're kosher. So it's beferish that it's mutter. So this question, number one, says Tosfos, this question is dependent, as we pointed out last week, There's a machlokes rishonim between the Rif and the Balamor, how to read that Gemara. Is that Gemara a choshed al arayis? Right, like Dr. Bacon pointed out, the language is very interesting. A choshed al arayis. Sounds like you're not actually involved in arayis. So therefore, Taisa says, that's why it's not a problem against what I just said. This Gemara is talking about Ploni Ravani. He's actually involved in the Revi'ah and the Maisabiyah. That Gemara that's in your Kosher Leidus, Isha, the Kosher Leidus, that's talking about a Choshed, a guy who has a bad reputation, a guy who's nichshal in whatever it is. He's not involved in the Revi'ah. He just has a bad reputation. People know that he's hanging around women a lot. So therefore, he's still kosher just because he has a bad reputation. Doesn't invalidate. Perish bekunches. Lavdi ikasade shabal ayirva. Not that Adam saw him actually transgress the avera. Elashu gas barayis. He's very comfortable in illicit relationships. He doesn't stop himself from interacting with the other woman. He'll touch them, he'll kiss them, he'll hug them. He's not machbid on the Isser Negiah, which is an Isser D'Oraisa. V'hai dekamar arboim bekatzve v'kosher. But the Gemara goes on to say, Rav Sheshes argues with Rav Nachman and says, you say that this choshel arayis is kosher? The Gemara there says, on Chavav Beis, arboim v'katve b'kosher? You're going to give the guy Malkus Arboim, and you're still going to call the guy kosher? So Taisa says, wait a second. I'm presenting to you that what? That guy is only a what? A choshed al arayis. Has a bad reputation. So why is Rav Sheshes responding to Rav Nachman saying, how can you call the guy kosher if he's going to get Malkus? That end statement of the Gemara, Rav Shesh's refutation, sounds like what? The guy's involved in the real McCoy. He's actually getting a punishment. And therefore, Rav Sheshes says, how could you be machshir him? That would be a point for the other pshat in the Rishonim, that what? That hold that he's actually involved in a Maisa Avera over there. So the Gemara says, no, that's not a raya, says Taisus. Hainu mishum de malkin ala yichud. Sometimes Bezdin has to introduce that if people are getting too lax in the area of intermingling, in the area of arayus, of negiah, or even things that people are chashid about, so therefore Bezdin might have to take matters into their own hands and give malchus on it. Unbelievable. An Isser Yichud. An Isser Yichud. Baruch Hashem, this is what the Shavuos Limud is going to be about, the Isser Yichud. We have to discuss all the details, but it's so scary that Bezdin, in the time when Bezdin was in control, they would actually give lashes when it wasn't accepted halachically. It wasn't a lav sheish b'malchus. And yet Bezdin said, even though you didn't transgress the avera, you made a bad reputation, you're living the wrong lifestyle, we're going to give you lashes. Unbelievable. It's still chashid. That's what Tosha says. I stick with my first diuk. It's still chashid. And that which Rav Sheshes says is it's malchus, don't bother me, because we found precedent that to the fact that even in a situation of chashid and just a lifestyle can already get malchus, even though that malchus is not a punishment malchus. It's more just for Bezdin to make a statement and to get people controlled. You wouldn't get 39 malchus. It would be a different type of malchus. We'll have to learn the details later of that lower level malchus. Okay. And he's still kosher le'edus. So therefore Taisa says, I still stand by my original answer. That if you actually are involved in a Maisa Avera of Bia, so then you're pasaleidus, like Rava said over here. That which the Gemara said later on that you're kosher, that's talking about a person that wasn't actually involved in the Avera. But that would define a Rosh Hashanah. Inami, says Taisus, and this is what we ended off with last week. Hasam kosher, mishum di yitzro tokfo kol kach, b'chashav ka'anos. Aval a-reviyah, ein yitzro tokfo kol kach. Says Tosas, this is where we left off. I was sitting next to Rabbi Schechter at a bris, and I told him what Tosas we were up to in the Shir, in the Sanhedrin. Sanhedrin's Rabbi Schechter's favorite Masechta. It was the Rav's favorite Masechta, it was Rabbi Schechter's favorite Masechta, and it was Rav Chaim Yaakov Goldvich, the Rosh Yeshiva Karem B'Yavneh's favorite Masechta. So we're in good hands, Baruch Hashem. But so I told him that what we were talking about last week, that the debate of the psychologist Bizman Hazeh about whether or not Mishkav Zocher has the same challenges that a person has in other areas, and is the psychology the same, that seems to be something that was discussed thousands of years ago in Tosos. Tosos is hundreds of years ago. Tosos, but close to 1,000 years ago. Tosos is This doesn't need Isra, and he has different days about this. How do we assess Mishkav Zachar? So Tosfos in this day says, you know what? I'm scratching everything I said up until now. Let's take the stronger version of that Gemara. Ha-choshed al arayis doesn't mean choshed. And we're going to stress what? The fact that he gets Malkus over there. Because it's the real McCoy. And a choshed for a good reason he's choshed. Because we actually saw him. So then if he's kosher leidus, so then why is he puzzled over here? Why is he puzzled according to Rav? And don't tell me that even Rava, who's Makel in general, Rava's puzzling over here. Rava's saying he's a Rosh of the Chamas. Taisa says, yeah, because that was something that was uncontrollable. To have illicit relations with the opposite gender, Taisa says that's something that's considered like, as if, obviously, it's not going to get you out of punishment, but it's considered onus in terms of your character to be invalid for edus and for testimony. But a person who gives into Mishkav Zachar, says Tosfos, the Yetzer Hara for Mishkav Zachar is not as extreme, is much more controllable, says Tosfos, and therefore, according to Rava, you gave into that desire that was not considered onus in the world of edus, you're pasul edus when it comes to Mishkav Zachar, as opposed to Mishkav Isha. Inami, Hachanami Yitzro Takvo, the kosher le'edus acheres. Look at what the next day says. The next day it was the next psychologist. The next day in Tosfos says, no, you can't say that. You can't make a distinction between a person who has a homosexual desire or a heterosexual desire. They're all the same ervos. They're all the same arayas. They're all the same. So what does he have to say? He has to say they're all kosher. They're all ba'ones. They're all people that are kosher. So what am I saying over here? The reason why he's not accepted over here is not because he has a shame psul. And if tomorrow you needed his edus for a dinei mamanis case, he would be a kosher aid. All Rav is saying is I can't accept his edus about this story, Revia itself. Because he's a chasher al oso davar. Just like if you don't keep kashrus, I can't trust you to eat in your kitchen. Not necessarily because I'm saying you're a horrible person. Not because I'm saying that you're now not nemon and you don't have nemonis. No, not necessarily. I'm just saying, if you don't keep certain areas la'alacha, then I can't trust you. If you don't have a bris milah, I can't trust you to be the mile on my son. Ha-chosher also davar, lo dano lo meido. You don't have nemonis on the area that you're not believed yourself. So Tosfos says we're not stamping him. But he wants to give edus about Revia, about a story that he's choshed on. He has no nemonis in this area. That's not a psul, but it's a choshed that Bezdin can't accept him. So Tosfos says in the last day that wants to equate Mishkav Zachar with Mishkav Isha and say that the Yetzer Hara is not different by Mishkav Zachar, Mishkav Isha. And in terms of a halacha of being a pasul aid, you're not pasul according to Rava in either area. Why? Because you're not a Rosh Hashanah. Nebuch, you have a strong Yetzer Hara. You're honest. You're under duress. You can't control yourself. Yet what? But in the area of Revia, for this testimony, for this case, Ploni, Ravani, Lertzoni, I can't accept your edus. You can't talk the oso davar. You can't talk in that category. So Sid raised the question last week, and we didn't have time to go into it, but it's a fascinating question. We don't accept Rava like we started off. We hold that if a person violates any lo saseh, that at least is a lo saseh sheyesh bo malkus, or would have the capability to get malkus were it not for a technicality, such a person he violates a lo saseh, he's already pasul le'edus. So does any of these svaras play out lamaisa? Does it ever have ramifications la'alacha? So that's the ksosachoshen that I brought for you in Siman Memvav. Siman Memvav is talking about a person that you find out to be a gazlan, and he signed on a shtar prior. So the K'tzai says the following idea, and the K'tzai says this in two different places. The K'tzai says, although we paskin, if you look at the K'tzais in Siman Yud Zayin, it's talking about a guy that was now proved to be a gazlan. So in the K'tzos.
No. Ziyaf Chatam?
Yeah, Ziyaf Chatam in Yud Zayin. I didn't start reading yet.
On the 71 page.
Page 71.
Top right, fourth line from the top. On the right.
You see where the Yud Zayin is?
Yeah.
So let's go 3 lines down. The first line, vertical line is im nifsal. He says there in the last 2 words on the line, V'hainu mishum derasha dechamos chashid la'oso davar v'chashtinan lemshaker b'shvil hanos mamon u'mishum hachi chayshinan shema ata ziyef v'chasam. Says the Ktsos, what's the case over here in the Shulchan Aruch? What's the problem over here? You have a person that was proved to be a gazlan. So now we have a shtar that was from way back before he was proved to be a gazlan. The date on the shtar is from way back before. So the shtar's still good. So says the Ktsos, no, not unless you can verify that he wasn't a gazlan at that time. Because what are we choshish for? A gazlan, says the Ktsos, is a rasha dechamas. A rasha dechamas, by definition, says the Ktsos, is not only someone who's a puzzle aid. He has a psul aid, says the Rava, because he's a chashash meshaker. Because we don't believe this guy, because he would give in to his Yetzer Hara. So not only do we passel him from now on, says the Ktsos, says the Shulchan Aruch, that other star also can't work. Because you know what I'm scared he did? He predated it. And really the star that you think is good, he just changed and he just signed it now. So therefore, says the Ktsos, unless you can verify that that's not the case, even that's going to be puzzle. And the Ktsos now creates 2 categories of halacha. La halacha of a rasha dechamas and a rasha de lav dechamas.
Why don't we question his chamsendika nature 20 years ago?
Right, you're saying no, because if you don't have proof, I mean, you can't passel a person for an avera that we didn't know he did. But what he's saying is that maybe that star that you think is good, that was written right now. And he's just lying about that. But then the Ktsos says this distinction about rasha dechamas, and I'm going to save time, we're not going to read it inside, and rasha de lav dechamas also plays out la halacha in another area. The Gemara says that when it comes to edus isha mishum iguna, if a woman doesn't know about the whereabouts of her husband, so we're very makel about what the sources could be. In certain circumstances, we could even rely on woman, and we could rely on aid mipi aid, and we could rely on goyim in certain circumstances, that we can be makel mishum iguna akilu b'rabbanan. But the Gemara in Yevamah says you can't rely on someone who's going to be a gazlan, a chashash b'shakir. He mamish is not only a puzzle aid, he has a chashash sheker. Says the Ktsos Achoshen in this Ktsos that if your psul is a chashash meshaker, you're not going to be accepted leidus isha. But if you're just a rasha because of a Abaye's world or in certain averus, that we're not worried about your Yetzer Hara, but we're just giving you a shame psul because you violate those losases, so says the Ktsos Achoshen, then you're not going to be puzzle for edus isha. So this chaps nafkaminas. Now, when we plug this back into our Tosfos, so let's say you have a person who's not makbid on arayis. You have a person that's not makbid on mishkav zocher. So now, depending on the pshatim in our Tosfos, let's say you have a person like that who's a chayal in the army, and he wants to give testimony about the whereabouts of a person that didn't make it. Would he be accepted or not? Is he a rasha dechamas, or is he a rasha de lav dechamas? So that's exactly what Taisus is debating. If he's considered, that's the 2 days in Taisus. If you take the approach of Taisus in the second day, that mishkav zacher is grouped with mishkav isha, and we call him in onus in terms of that, so he doesn't lose his believability in court. And that's why Taisus says, the Gemara says, a chashed al arayis is kasher le'edus. Again, the version that holds chashed al arayis means arayis mamish. Why over here do you apostle him? Because it's ba'oso davar. He's talking about ploni ravani l'tzoni. That I can accept him. But am I a rasha dechama? Says Tosfos according to Rava, no. So we ask, does this play out lamaisa? Does this relevant to us? Sid asked, we don't paskin like Rava. Yeah, it's relevant. It's relevant for all the situations that we're going to distinguish between a Rasha Dechamas and a Rasha Delav Dechamas, even though we paskin like Abaye that anyone who violates any Aveira is puzzle. So he might not be able to give testimony about the big case in Bezdin about Dinei Mominus because we paskin like Abaye and he's not a kosher aid. But what about areas where we don't need, we need even, we accept even Psula Edis, but we just don't accept Shash Meshakers. So now all of our Shitas and Tosos are going to have serious ramifications. Legabe, what you hold, a person who's choshed al arayis, person who's, according to one day, even if he's involved in the Averis of Revia, maybe. So that's now going to have ramifications. Legabe the Shaila and Mishkav Zachar is going to have ramifications. And it will have other ramifications where you're going to distinguish. So I'm just pointing out the idea, even though we don't paskin like Rava, this idea of Chash Meshaker, of Rasha Dechamas, does play out, like the Ktos is saying, in other areas, not for every aid. In terms of Bezdin on a regular court case, it's very simple. Did you violate the lo sase? Did you not violate the lo sase? Tosa says you violated the lo sase. The Abaye says you're out. But now we're finding out that even according to Rava and all of our days of Tosos, certain areas la halacha, when we're going to be worried about being choshesh l'sheker, so then all of these days are going to come back to life, like the case of the Chayalim, or scenarios where we're concerned that maybe a person signed it now and is predating it, like the Tosas is talking about. So therefore, all of our days in Tosas are going to play up halacha l'maisa. So let's go on in Tosas.
Is this a uniform thing that's second day in Tosos? Meaning, if I'm a Baal Taiva in any area, then I'm automatically off limits for that area, regardless. If I don't keep Shabbos, I can't see it say the guy drove on Shabbos.
Yeah, achashel al adavar lo. That's a Gemara. The Gemara in Bukhari says achashel al adavar lo danu lo meido. That's a Mishnah.
Even if he's not a Baal Dover in this case.
Right. He can't give us nemonis in that area.
And
Now you're gonna have to play into other svaras of. I'm saying now a tinuk shenishba. He doesn't know. He's not a chashad al adavar. Assuming a guy knows the halachas. And a guy is aware about the system, and he's just chashid, he's not makbid on it, there's no nemonos in that area. It's a problem. It's a big problem. It's a big problem. Yeah, so Reb Moshe has a tshuva about people who are not makbid on kashrus for parents to cook for the children. Because Reb Moshe has a heter that he thinks that a parent would take, obviously assuming that the parent is normal like that, but a parent would still be sensitive to the needs of the kid. So even though they don't keep necessarily themselves, they'll eat out sometimes. But Ramesha says that there is a svara that they're not going to be machshel the kid. But that's already svaras to try to get around this fundamental issue. But principally, meaning you can have areas that you can learn hilchos psulei edus, you can learn psuchos dayan. I'm not necessarily puzzle. I didn't violate that. But in that area, you have no nemonis. In that area, you can't talk. You don't keep that area. It's just like we say la halacha. How could a person who's mechal Shabbos get an aliyah that talks about shmira Shabbos? He can't be above. Yeah.
How far do you take that? Someone who eats good rocks?
Nah. Everybody eats gebrach. Araya shmini shavesach. Good.
what exactly is, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
What exactly is then this psul of chamas?
Of chamas.
What does that mean?
I think what it means is that a person who just gives into his yetzer. That's the way Taisus is defining it.
Knowing, with the caveat, that he knows that
He knows it's a problem.
that's not right, that he's not supposed to.
Right, but now Tosas is limiting it, and Tosas is saying
It's a low level of.
and it's controllable.
Yes.
Meaning, originally, before I saw his Tosas, I would say it's a person who gives into his Yetzer Hara. A big taiva for something, and he'll big into Yetzer Hara, and he knows that it's usher, and he'll have the two options in front of him. He'll know what the right thing to do is, and he goes for the wrong thing because of his pleasure. So now Tosas says, it's not true. Even in a situation where you have those two options, you know what the wrong thing is, there are certain Yetzer Haras that are incontrollable. And now Tosas starts playing what's incontrollable, what's not incontrollable. So now that's going to have, this all is psychology. It's all psychological levels. What is considered leaving the Rebbeinu Shalom, and now is going to now be a concern for Beis Din that now you might accept a bribe.
Except the real psychological question is, what makes something controllable or not?
Right. That's why I think there's so many days in Tosas over here. It's so not clear. Yeah.
I mean, hold the Pintel in the sense that isn't everyone's sin. They really don't. It's not that they want to do it necessarily. Some people do opposite, but you always if you're about north, if you're a frum guy and you come in the era, 50-50, you might know about it depending on the situation, right? If it was amazing, so you knew about it because
Right.
you were educated. So what's the shot?
Well, Lahachis is a different story.
No, Lahachas is exact. Again, how did the Gemara start? Rava introduced Rasha the Chamas because the Gemara starts off Mummer Ochel Nevelas Lahachis Abayi Amar Pasel Rava Amar Kosher. We happen to hold a person has two burgers in front of him and they taste exactly the same. There is no Yetzer Hara for one over the other. Abayi, and you take the Nevela. Abayi says you're Pasel Edus. You just violated Los Haseshish Mamalkas. Rava says no. That's a crazy guy, says Rava, but that's not Pasal Edus. We need someone who we're going to be concerned is going to give in to his desires and is going to take a fat check in order to testify falsely. You need a Rasha de Chamas. So now, Tosfos says, okay, well, this isn't a Rasha de Chamas. Because Tosfos assumed it was only in the area of Mammon or Taiva of Mumar Ochel Nevelis Te'alvin because it's cheaper, whatever it is. So Tosfos says, no, also the desires is also a problem. So your kasha is now, so every Pintel Yid knows that what they're doing is wrong. So once Tosfos says that
They
if...
do it because they can't.
So now, again...
They can't control. They don't want to control.
So now Tosfos says, so 1 second. So Tosfos says that if you can't control it, so you're not going to be a Rasha de Chamas. If you can't control it, you're not going to be a Rasha de Chamas. So what's your kasha?
I'm saying, you can always control it. I mean, you can always control
You could,
it. You choose
yeah.
not to.
In Echanami, there has to be. You're right. I'm asking. There has to be a certain level that Tosfos is weighing over here, that the pressure of the desire is so much stronger than the knowledge of what's right or what's wrong.
Never get an ownish for it. Then.
No. So that's exact. This is not legabe onshin. Rava is maskim that this guy's getting malchus. Rava is maskim that I'll put the guy to death. Rava is now creating a new category of halacha. Rava is saying for psul edus I need a Rasha de Chamas because we didn't passel everyone that's chayiv misa and we didn't passel that everyone's chayiv malchus. Abayi says no. Abayi says we look at onshin and we carry it over to psul edus. Rava is the one who's mechadesh that says no. Psul edus has to be about bribes, about money, about cash. It has to be achshash sheker. So that once you're in Rava's world, okay, so onshin are off the table. That's not something that's gonna fit the criteria. So let's go a little bit weiter, Rabbi Shai.
Can you just repeat for 1 second what the Ksot added to this? What was
The Ksosha said that Rava, we think that we're learning a Tosos that's not Nogei Lamaisa. Because this is all in the world of Rava. I don't paskin like Rava. I just told you the guy who eats the cheeseburger, no matter what his desire is puzzle. So why are we wasting our time? Who cares if Mishkav Zachar is different than Mishkav Isha, what the Yetzer Hara, what the Yetzer Hara. So I told you it's not true. There is cases. And the Ktsos explains that is exactly what we're talking about when it talks about the Chayalim. Now we have to decipher when it comes to every Aveira that we know is Aser, and we know, like Eitan says, they're going to be Onshin, but that's not enough for Eidus Isha. Has to be a Rasha de Chamas. Has to be a Chash Sheker. And for those Averos, we're going to have different approaches. We might also invalidate the star from an earlier date because he might have lied about it. We might now not accept his Eidus, even in the world of Eidus Isha, because now it's a Rasha de Chamas. It's not only a Rasha that's Pasal Eidus. Even in areas that's Pasal Eidus in general, over here we accept it, but not a Rasha de Chamas, like a Gazlan.
So that shash, that the position that Rava presents, which we don't possibly.
Yeah. Is revived in certain areas.
And it is certainly, Abaye would certainly agree with
For sure. Yeah. Okay. So now the Gemara goes. So now Tosfos goes on. V'hada parach beparakama de Makkos. Tosfos says, let's go back to our favorite Gemara in the first parak of Makkos. Nir beyatzil. What was the Gemara? Everyone has the Gemara over here. The other sheet. Again, this is a very important Gemara. Probably one of the most important Gemaras in Maseches Makos. The Gemara had a fundamental question. It's by the second two dots. Amrle Rav Papa Abaye. How many lines down, Abe? We were struggling last week. Amar Rav Papa Abaye. It's the second Gemara. Ela me'ata harag yatzil. So if any time you're going to have one of the Eidim that's in the group is going to invalidate the Eidus, as long as one of the Eidim is puzzle, all the Eidim are thrown out. Nimtzach Karva puzzle, Eidus and Betela, that's the source. Makas daf hey, daf vav. Ela me'ata harag yatzil. So the guy who's stabbed, who's watching his stabbing, Gemara asks, he should now, he's a puzzle aid, because he should invalidate the rest of the group. So the Gemara says, Kishahargu me'achorov. No, he stabbed him in the back. So the only time you're chayiv ritzicha is if he stabbed him in the back, says the Gemara. Nir beyatzil. So if you were involved in a revia, in an illicit relation, so he watched the revia. He should also save the testimony against the roveya. Kisharavo me'achorov. It's talking about where there was a relationship and he wasn't able to watch. And then the Gemara goes on to say, but what he's going to say, Horig v'roveya yatzilu. The Avarion, the Rotseach, was also watching his own murder. He had to know where to stick the knife. So the Gemara says, he's a puzzle aid. And the Roveya had to know where to find the person. So the Gemara says, Ishtik. So the Gemara says he was stuck. He didn't know what the answer is. This is unbelievable Gemara. So again, now Tosfos says in our Tosfos, V'hadar parach perakam demakis. Nir bayatzil. Ein lefarish yatzil lefishu pasol machmas shesone. Tosfos says, 1 second. Why is the nir bapasel? The assumption of the Gemara Makkos over there is that we have one of the Eidim that's watching the case that's an invalid aid. Why is he invalid? What's the problem? Tosfos says, what? I just told you that he's not invalid. So Tosfos says, Ein lefarish yatzil lefishu pasol machmas shesone haroveya. So Tosfos says, well, maybe you'll tell me that the reason why he's puzzle is because he hates the guy who's doing this to him. A guy's raping him, and he hates him. And a guy, Tosfos is obviously assuming that if I hate the Nidon, I hate the Baldin, I hate the person that's up for, so obviously I'm a puzzle aid. Why? Why does he hate him? Sharavula ons. Machar shesono arovea sharavula onso. Shekach hayanir lefarish, because Tosfos says I would have said that. Dum yud harag yatzil. Just like the Gemara says, harag yatzil. What's the reason harag yatzil? Why is the harag puzzle, the guy who's about to die, why is he puzzle eidus? Because he hates the guy who just killed him. He's a soneh. So Tosfos adds in an interpretation to the Gemara just now. What is the assumption of the Gemara that all these guys, the Nirba and the Nerag, is now going to invalidate the whole group and save everyone's life? It's because they're sonim. It's because they're sonim. Is that true? I hate the guy's guts who's now in Bezdin. But I happen to know testimony. Am I kosher or puzzle edus? Let me ask you a better case. I love the guy who's up for testimony. I'm his best friend. We go back college, and he gives me the kibbutz to be his aid kiddushin at his daughter's wedding, or at his own wedding. Am I kosher or puzzle? What is the din? Tosfos is telling me that a soneh is puzzle. So if that's the case, what about an ohev? So the answer is, this is a Mishnah. This is a Mishnah in the third parak on Chav Zayin Amabez. Ma'asim b'chol yom. Go to the Mishnah on Chav Zayin Amabez towards the end of the Mishnah. Statement of Rabbi Yehuda, I'm going to skip a little bit, but Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, I'm going to skip to the fourth, 5 lines above the Gemara. Ha'oyev v'hasoynei, oyev zeh sheshbino. Oyev is someone who is walking him down to the wedding, right? B'mei chupaso. Soneh, and what's a soneh? What's the definition of a soneh? This is a very important Gemara in the world of Machshava as well. Kol shelo diber imo shlosha yamim. A person that doesn't speak to his friend, bedafka, because of a fight, be'eva, then he's a sona. So what does the Gemara say? What does the Mishnah say? Amr le lo nechshildu Yisrael al kach. It says Chachamim, just because you're a sona, just because you don't speak to a guy for 3 days, you are not pasal le'edus. Where's the vav of the Rambam and the Shulchan Aruch on that line in the Mishnah? On the Amr le, which means what? We paskin like who? Like Rabbi Yehuda, or like Chachamim? We paskin like Chachamim. Lo nechshadu Yisrael al kach. Comes along the Maharsha, and he asks on our Tosos, what's Tosos saying? Tosos saying, I really thought that what's the reason a horug and a nearby is pasul? Because he hates the guy who's doing this to him. He hates the guy who's killing him. Or he hates the guy who's raping him. And a sone is what? A sone is kosher le'edus. A sone is not pasul le'edus. Ask the Maharsha, we paskin like Chacham. And the Gemara goes on to say in that Gemara, we paskin like Chacham. Like the Rambam shows up there. We don't paskin like Rabbi Yehuda. So what's going on? So the Maharsha has to, his hands are tied. He says, yeah, the whole pshat that I'm saying right now in Tosos is only alib de Rabbi Yehuda, shelo alib de Hilchasa. That's what the Maharsha says. But the Maharshal, Rav Shlomo Luria, who's the bar plugta, always with the Maharsha, on the Perushim in Tosos, says, no, absolutely not. He says, you got it wrong. And this is going to have tremendous ramifications. The K'tzais HaChoshen, in another area in Choshen Mishpat, quotes this Maharshal La'alacha. He says, that Mishnah between Chachamim and Rabbi Yehuda, we're talking about a sone, doesn't talk to a guy for 3 days. Come along Chazal and say, Lo nechshadu Yisrael al kach. You don't speak to a guy for 3 days, that's not going to make you lie in the world of Edus, and you're not pasal Edus. But comes along the Maharshal and says, Tosis is not talking about that case. Tosis is talking about a case of rape. Says the Maharshal, that's a soine gomer. A soine gomer, says the Maharshal, Tosis right here is paskening la'alocha, even aliba de chachomim is pasal. This is something that's not found in Shulchan Aruch. This is something that Shulchan Aruch just quotes Rabbi Yehuda and Chachamim. We paskin like Chachamim. Sona is kosher. You'd ask anyone, a Sona is kosher. Sona is kosher. What's the problem? Says the Maharshal, but if you read Tais, it's not true. And the Tais quotes is halacha. A Sona gomer, someone who's stabbed, someone who's raped. That is such a traumatic experience that the person really hates. So hatred can passel you this, even according to the halacha, even according to Chachamim. So Rabbi Shechter once pointed out to me, if it's your best buddy, the same logic of the Maharshal should be true. So maybe according to this Maharshal and Lektzos, it should be usher. And it shouldn't be such a kibbut if you call me up to be your Eid Kedushin. It means, yeah, I like you. I don't love you. You're not a Hoiv Gomer. You're an Oyev. We speak, we schmooze. But you're not going to take a bullet for me. You're not an Oyev Gomer, like to the level that a Soine Gomer that even the Maharshal would pass. Yeah, Eitan.
That's out there, I'm sure.
Yeah.
That's so true. If you look in the Torah, right? Rashi says, I think by Bilam, that when he got to saddle his donkey, the whole reason why he did it and he got into the schmutz of it is because hatred caused you to go out of the norm and to do crazy things.
So sin is worse. So sin is worse.
Yeah, love.
I hear. Also, the Gemara says by Moshe and Aaron. The Gemara says Moshe and Aaron really should have been kosher. The Gemara says that's the raya that a karov is not possible. The Gemara Baba Basra says not because of a chshad l'shakir, because the Gemara says even Moshe and Aaron are possible, and Moshe and Aaron were ahuvim. We're shnei ahuvim zeh zeh. So yeah.
So that's maybe Karov's exeris.
No, but I'm saying like Eitan. I'm saying, but Moshe and Aaron not only were krovim, they were ahuvim. They loved each other, and they were oiv gemurim. And
They were possible because they Karov's.
exactly, that's what I'm saying. They were not possible because not because of ahuv. That's what I'm saying to support what Eitan's saying. Yeah.
Edus l'kiyam adam would be the same here? I mean,
What's the difference?
it's a shock. You're just making sure there's like a halos.
But according to Taisus, the whole taikif of the Edus is because it's yachol is bar bebezdin. Because ultimately, if and or but we need to have a din Torah about this, you'll be the ones that'll come to court. But I think even if you hold not like that, like the Ritva we spoke about, that the Ritva says that the whole Shem Eid is chal under the chuppah, like you're saying, like Eidus L'Kiyam Adavar. We don't find that the Psule Eidus are different.
What would the Chacham say if it was more than 3 days? I mean, the fact that you put a time limit in there.
Right. It's very vague. We're creating a new category over here, a Soine Gomer. So what's what all we know is rape. All we know is murder. What do you know? What if you're Bernie Madoff? I don't know. You killed me. You destroyed my life. You know, I don't know. I don't know what the shear is. But the Tzais and the Marashal are assuming from Taisis there is a certain sinna that would for sure pass. We have a debate amongst the Chabur whether or not to carry that back over to Oev. But for sure for sinna, there's some sort of gradation, and we're not sure what the cutoff is.
Again, that's part of the problem. Who do you call a sonay and what is a sonay?
Right.
The person in the Nevarium, it's the mitzvah.
Right.
So this really is.
Yeah, I don't know if the mitzvah for sinna. I don't know.
I mean, at least it's.
Yeah, I don't know if that would count as a real personal.
But the point is when you use the word sonay in that context,
Right.
at least it
Right.
identifies the person
Right.
as a rush.
Right.
We're not in that category.
Right. So basically, what's happening over here in this Tosos is all these things that we thought were loli b'dehilchasa. Whether it's a Russia, the Hamas, Mishkav Zachar, all these discussions. No, we're found that there's nafkaminas. There are certain situations where it does play a role. And now even what we thought, a Soni and an Oev, you look in Shulchan Aruch, it's not Nogei La'alacha. Tosos brings it back to life. Tosos says, no, these type of Sonim, at least according to the Marshal, these type of Sonim, they are going to be puzzled. Okay, we'll have to pick up in Mirz Hashem.
Also because of the concept of being nogei b'davar.
Oh, so that's really what I wanted to talk about. We ran out of time. What does it mean to be Nogea B'davar? What does Negias mean? If you have something to do with the case, but I don't necessarily have any gain, so that's a Mirz Hashem we'll talk about next week. When a Nogea B'davar actually comes possible, it's a major machlokes poskim in Shulchan Aruch.